Okay, this meeting tonight is being broadcast through Area 58 on channel 15, and it's also being broadcast through Zoom. And on Zoom, I'd like to have Superintendent Neef say a few words about the process of Zoom participation.
Yeah, we're just asking those people who are participating via Zoom at home to turn off their videos during the presentation of the meeting. And then also, if you're interested in participating in the comments from the general public, when we get to that point of the agenda, in the chat, you'll be able to reach out to Director of Curriculum, Technology and Instruction, Meredith Erickson, and she's making a list of those people who would like to make a public comment. And at that time, we will call on you and ask you to unmute yourself and share your comments with the audience. I want everybody to be aware that everything that's said via Zoom is also being broadcast on Area 15, and it's also being broadcast in the auditorium at the middle high school. Thanks, everybody.
All right, with that being said, I'd like to do a few introductions. I'm Andy Cottarelli. I'm the chairman of the Carver School Committee. To my right, we have Stephanie Clarity. She's the vice chair of the Carver School Committee. We have next Jason Greenwood. He's a member of the Carver School Committee, and Jennifer Pratt, also a member. We have another member, James O'Brien, couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately. To my left, you know Scott Neef as the superintendent. We have Meredith Cottarelli next to him as Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Technology, and Ms. Gina Marie Russell, Administrative Assistant to the Superintendent. All right, so do we have a representative from the APC here tonight for a comment? Seeing none. Okay.
I think they may be in Zoom.
Oh, you're on Zoom?
I just got muted.
Tammy, if you can unmute, we are ready for comments from the EPC. Great.
Sorry, everyone. All right, so can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, Scott, sorry, there are people having trouble using the link getting in. It took me a while to get in. So, thank you, everyone. All right. So, I can't seem to shut my phone off. Sorry, everyone. That was a little bit of a debacle. So first, I'd like to take this time to remember a very dedicated Carver educator, Kevin Nolan. On July 14th, Kevin passed away from a long-term illness. Kevin taught at the Carver Middle High School for 28 years. He primarily taught earth science and geology. He touched so many hearts and he influenced so many. He influenced so many lives from our school community. He is survived by his family and spouse, Donna Nolan, a former music teacher at Carver who also has had a positive impact on many Carver students. We would like to extend our deepest sympathy and condolences to her and his family. Family is really important. Our school community works and lives together as a family. I have the deepest respect for our administration and understand the difficult decisions that they now face. Everyone that makes up our school community comes from a set of experiences and perspectives that bring us to conclusions that do not always match up. The following thoughts are from the perspective of the educators that dedicate themselves to the well-being of all our children. At the end of the school year in June, many of us educators were completely exhausted from the school closure and working through remote learning. We missed so many end-of-year activities. We missed seeing and being with our students. The last thing any of us wanted to do was to continue learning, remote learning in the fall. Here we are now. COVID-19 cases are on the rise again. We have a more in-depth understanding of how in-person learning will play out. We know now that children are susceptible to the virus that can spread it. We know we need to look at remote learning differently. We know that timely testing and contact tracing helps prevent the spread of the virus. We know that preparing for all of these changes takes time. We want nothing more than to return to school with our students, but safety has to be paramount. We must question whether the risk of contracting the virus from which hundreds of thousands of deaths have occurred is worth taking. How and when we decide to reopen schools must be considered carefully. Many educators across the state and in Carver recommend we start with remote learning for at least 2 weeks and phase in-person learning as we prepare for the school year. Beginning with a remote learning model provides us educators the opportunity to lay the expectations of a remote learning plan, a much more robust plan in which all children are expected to partake. When it is safe, we can phase in the hybrid model, and then when ready, the full in-person model. The hybrid model requires students to attend school 2 out of the 5 days in a school week and work remotely the other 3. Whether the hybrid model or the remote learning model be the way we begin school, families will need to plan for childcare. If we begin the school year with the hybrid model, and when cases and symptoms begin to rise, families will be faced with missing work or needing childcare for the time it takes to be tested and receive results. This process could potentially take at least a week, if not more. This will lead to more uncertainty and challenges for families that need childcare. If we phase in using remote learning as a starting point, families will have all of August and September to plan. If we go straight to the hybrid model or full in-person, we cannot predict how long it will take before we need to close. Close due to extensive absences, contracting the virus, or worse, someone may die. Schools are a place of community building, compassion, and collaboration. All of these facets of education enhance academic learning and contribute to creating a safe and welcoming environment in which learning can take place. Social distancing, facial coverings, and heightened fears do not. As experienced education professionals, we believe remote learning can be improved, and we are ready when we are confident that the safety of everyone can be secured to return to in-person instruction. We will continue to advocate for a return to learning that is guided by science, with the safety and well-being of our students, staff, and faculty first. We are Carver. We sit next to Plymouth and above the Cape. Both of those regions have experienced huge numbers of tourism in the last month or two. This plan gives us the room to plan and respond to the increases of cases that tourism will guarantee in the next month. It also prevents our students and families from making a major shift so early in the year. Thank you for that time.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tim. And also, this obviously the school administration, the school committee also condemn their condolences to the Nolan and Barron family, both which have been really long-term members of the Carver educational community. So we're all sorry to hear about the passing of Kevin. So Tammy, thank you for that dedication.
All right, so we move on to reports from the school, from the superintendent on public hearing of the Carver reopening plan.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and for participating in our Zoom call. I also want to thank everyone who's been involved in developing our plan. We've had parents, teachers, staff, administration. It's really been a large group that's been involved in putting these 3 plans together. The committee is charged with making a decision that's going to be difficult to make, and ultimately will leave some people unhappy and concerned with the decision that has been made. This is the first time that any of us are in a situation where the school district has been charged with developing 3, but no, really 4 different possible models for education, which we have done and which we're going to talk about here this evening. And then there's the reality of the difference between the theory of a model and what it's going to actually look like in practice. So we've drawn these models up, but it may, there's a reality piece that when we actually go to implement some of these things, we might hit some bumps in the road. I commit to all of you that we're going to be willing to be flexible and ready to adjust to all circumstances. Call for both on a macro level. There might be changes within the pandemic that may lead us to shift between models. And I want to be really clear that there's a reality that during the year, as Tammy kind of referenced in her comments, we could shift from a remote model to a hybrid model to an in-person model. But then also, we're going to be ready to shift on the micro level. There's a reality piece of, there's some things we might talk about in the plan that we feel like is going to work well, but when we actually begin to implement that plan, we might find that there's a challenge with that specific aspect of the plan. And we as a school community are definitely prepared to make adjustments and adjust as we go. Ultimately, this is our first time having to do this. And you always do things better the second time. Now, hopefully, we as a community, myself as the superintendent, the teachers, the administrators, the school committee, all of us, will never be asked to do this again. so hopefully we don't have the opportunity to do it differently. But there is a reality piece of this is really a learning curve for all of us. I would never claim to be the person who has all the answers, because I know I do not. But I do know that a lot of thought and energy has gone to the development of these plans. I also want the community to know tonight, you may not be able to answer every specific question you have. The reality is, some questions really depend on the model that's selected by the committee, how many families decide to stay remote, the availability of staff, depending on the model. So there are aspects of the plan that we're going to continue to build after the school committee makes a decision in terms of what model we're implementing, because that's just the reality of pieces of the plan. So that there is a commitment that that plan is going to continue, and then we're going to try to maintain keep and maintain open lines of communication with the community in terms of what's happening. I also want to note that the science around the pandemic and COVID-19 is changing and at times conflicting. This evening I'm going to present some information that's supported by a group of scientists and a group of doctors from the Harvard Medical School, and the reality is I'm going to cite some information that someone else could probably cite another study or another group of doctors who may refute the statements that I'm going to make here this evening. So we all know that you might hear some thoughts tonight you disagree with. I'm going to be open to considering everyone's perspective, and I ask everyone here to do the same. Listen to each other, learn from each other as we go forward to make this decision. We must all be willing to work together as a community to do what's in the best interest of our students, and no matter what model is selected, you have my promise and my commitment that I will do everything in my power to make the most effective, or make that model the most effective model possible that supports our kids' academic and social and emotional growth. I know our teachers, our administrators, and our staff will do the same. They will be committed to implementing whatever model is selected in full, and I know we as a community will do the same. So thank you for listening to me on my kind of little opening statement. And with that, I'm going to go into the presentation of an overview of the three models. Now, there's pieces of the presentation. So last Wednesday, we had a school committee meeting. And during that school committee meeting, we did kind of an update of where we were in terms of our planning. Not a lot has changed in that week. So probably we presented 90% of what was in the plan, if not 95% of what was in the plan last Wednesday. I realize maybe not everyone who was here in attendance in person or who attended the Zoom meeting last week, or may have, sorry, I'll rephrase that. I realize that not everyone here or everyone on the Zoom call may have attended the meeting last Wednesday. So I am going to go through the entire presentation. But in the presentation, you'll see some different colored slides or some things bolded. So this page is the exact same page I presented last week. But if you get to a slide that's a different color, or if you get to a slide that has some information that's in bold, that is either different or new information that's changed a little bit since last week's presentation. So I just wanted to give everybody that kind of understanding and background. So we did have several reopening committees that I mentioned. We had a teaching and learning subcommittee, a scheduling subcommittee, a facilities and operations subcommittee, student support services, and a parent advisory committee. And there's a link here with the committee membership. I'm not going to pull that up again, but I can tell you that well over 50 people were involved in the development of these plans. And I think this is pretty well known. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but the state has charged each school district in Massachusetts to develop 3 models for the fall. An in-person return meeting safety and health requirements, a hybrid combination of the in-person and remote learning, and a remote learning model. Now, this is a new slide. I'm going to give some information tonight from what's called the Parabola Project. This project is sponsored by Ironman Labs and the Learning Accelerator, which is from the Harvard School of Public Health and Brigham and Women's Hospital. I'm going to give you a little background information on these two groups, just so you know where this information is coming from. As you can see on the presentation, they released this and said this is for public use. They want schools and school committees to use pieces of their presentation as they talk about their reopening plans. So any slide that you see that is from their presentation will have that kind of marker up in the front, that is from the Learning Accelerator. It'll have their logos there. But let me tell you a little bit about Arrington Labs and the Learning Accelerator. Arrington Labs is a joint center for health systems and innovation at Brigham and Women's Hospital and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. This is right from their website. We develop simple, scalable solutions that dramatically improve the delivery of healthcare at critical moments to save lives and reduce suffering. Our vision is for a health system that delivers the best possible care for every patient, everywhere, every time. We're a team of 110 physicians, nurses, researchers, data scientists, implementation specialists, program managers, and operational professionals, and 150 plus associate faculty and affiliated members from across the Harvard system and beyond. The Learning Accelerator is a national nonprofit that's working to make the potential possible and practical for every teacher and learner. Underpinning TLA's work is a drive to ensure each student receives an effective, equitable, and engaging education that supports them to reach their full and unique potential. Our mission is to connect teachers and leaders with the knowledge, tools, and networks that they need to transform K-12 education. So what is the Parable Project? The goal of the Parable Project is to rapidly identify, develop, and share guidance and tools to help school system leaders and practitioners consider how to more safely reopen schools during the COVID-19 pandemic. Drawing on expertise from both the education and health communities, the Parable Project aims to minimize health risks to students, staff, and teachers while maximizing learning for all students. The initiative draws inspiration from the parabola, a type of geometric curve that can be used to determine minimum or maximum diagonals. Every parabola has a key, a focus, through which all lines pass. So it's like I said, I want to give you a little bit of background on where these slides come from, where this information comes from. So in the Parabola Project, they've identified principles for schools in terms of a healthy restart. We established core health principles as the foundation from which we design our tools and prevention solutions. They are the guardrails within which we must stay and design safer reentry options. The principles are used in combination for health decisions and around reopening. And I think these principles are really key to look at. No single principle will effectively lower risk. And we won't be able to do all of these principles perfectly all the time. And their principles are going to be the health and safety principles I'm going to go over in this presentation, the concepts of wearing masks, social distancing, establishing cohorts. These principles work together to decrease the risk of transmission. The more we follow these principles, the lower the risk will be. And I think the last point is also a key point. We cannot reduce the risk of COVID transmission to zero. Some risk remains, even with maximum adherence, especially if the community transmission increases. I really like this slide from their presentation, this whole concept of the balanced view of risk. And I just read the last slide too, I'm not going to read this slide to you. But if you really take a look at it, I'll read that top piece in the white. The decisions around the return to school must reflect a global view of risk. We must balance the risks of COVID-19 infection within school learning and other significant risks to the overall health and well-being of our kids while they're out of school. And obviously they're talking about loss of learning, social and emotional impacts of being out of school, reduced detection of child abuse, nutritional insecurity in some areas, loss of parental employment, lack of access to essential services. And just saying that we have to weigh all of these risks out against each other as we make a decision on how our students return. The principles behind the principles. I'm going to read these again because I think they are important. And it's what we know about today, about COVID-19. Individuals can still transmit the virus before they show symptoms, even if they've never developed symptoms. Children under 10 tend to have milder cases of COVID-19, and current research suggests they spread the virus less than adults. Emerging research indicates that children 10 to 19 may transmit the virus very similarly to adults. Schools so far do not appear to be the main epicenter for COVID transmissions. Transmissions seem to be related more to droplets in the air when people cough or sneeze, talk or sing, than to touching contaminated surfaces, though both are important. Transmission is decreased with greater physical distance, smaller gatherings, wearing face masks, and isolating sick when home. These kind of core principles, which obviously tie directly into DESI's core principles. Basic public health practices, hand washing, disinfecting surfaces, immunizations are critical to reducing the spread of COVID-19 and other illnesses. Now this slide I've taken from the DESI presentation from Commissioner John Riley. It's been in every presentation I've made this summer about returning to school. It supports the same concepts that they were talking about in the Bradley Project of, these are kind of our 4 core safety ideas: masks and face coverings, physical distancing, hand washing, hand sanitizing, staying home with sick. These are all things you've heard many times over the past 5 or 6 months, whatever our time has been since we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic. So specifically, we're going to begin to look at 3 plans: a full in-person return, a hybrid return, and a remote return, which kind of has 2 aspects to it, which we'll talk about. The full in-person return is really based on the health and safety guidance. Ultimately, if everyone returned to school and everyone was back in this building or in the elementary school, there'd still be impacts on curriculum because we'd have to look, our timing would be a little different because of transportation, because of all the different things we're going to talk about. But in core structure, we'd be very similar to what we had been in the past, except we'd have to implement these health and safety guidelines. So the focus on the discussion about the in-person return is really focused on what are our guidelines around these things of mask and social distancing, etc. But I also want to point out that these in-person health and safety requirements are also the same in-person health and safety requirements if we're in a hybrid model. Our goal would be we're going to implement these requirements no matter which model we're in. So if kids are coming to school, these health and safety requirements will be in place. Masks. All students grade 2 and above are going to be required to wear masks. Grade K and 1 are going to be required to wear masks during transitions, on the bus, during movement, with a recommendation that they wear them in class. And I know that I think there's mixed views on, there's a lot of mixed views on masks in general, but there's definitely a mixed view on masks in terms of the younger you are, pre-K, K1. But the state guidance requires any in-person model to require masks for all students 2nd grade and above. Pre-K, where our position right now would be no masks. Certainly families in the pre-K program could have their students wear masks, and staff would be wearing masks, but we're not going to require them to wear masks. All adults have to wear masks. We have to plan mask breaks during the day. There's a slide, we're going to talk about that a little bit in a second. There could be exceptions based upon disability, which will be managed through our special education programs. All students must wear a mask on the bus no matter their age. The districts will provide 1 reusable mask to each student. We actually have some logoed masks, some logoed gaiters too, for the Crusader and the Coyote at the high school and elementary school. We're going to give everybody at least 1 of those. And then we have, I think Brad Brothers last week said we have 37,000 disposable masks on site, ready to distribute if needed. Mask breaks. So this is new information. We didn't talk about this last week. Ultimately, the guidance says that any mask break needs to occur at 6-foot social distancing. Depending on what model we're in, that's going to vary. In a full return model, and which we're going to get this in a second, I don't want to get too ahead of where I am in the presentation, our desks are going to be closer together. Depending on what building you're in, it's going to be 4 to 5 feet. In a hybrid model, we can guarantee that we can maintain 6 feet social distancing of all desks. So students really can take mask breaks in a classroom setting in that model, because the requirement for a mask break is that you're at least 6 feet of social distancing. So at the elementary school, we're talking about a 5-10 minute mask break every hour in the classroom setting, with discretion of the teacher of when that actually occurs within the hour. We don't want to say it has to happen at 9 o'clock, because maybe at 9 o'clock something really valuable is going on, and it's not a good time to have a mask break. So we have some discretion with the teachers. At recess, if they're outside, obviously, during snack, because they have to take a mask break to eat, and during lunch. At the middle high school, we're going to ask each teacher to incorporate a mask break into each individual class. We'll talk about the periods and the schedule a little later on, and during lunches, and if classes are outside. We're going to be encouraging people if possible, if it works, to do some outside classes. This is from the Parabola project, the slide. Because this question's come up a lot about face shields. And basically their point of view here, again, I won't read the slide too, is that a face shield does not replace masks or face coverings. And that is actually supported by the DESE guidance, and our guidance from DESE, from the Department of Education, is saying that we cannot allow face shields to replace face masks. That is a frequently asked question that we get is, can my son or daughter, or can a staff member wear a shield instead of a mask? Physical distancing. Started to talk about this a little bit. At the elementary school, we can do 23 desks in the classroom facing forward at 4 to 5 feet apart. We can do 18 desks in the classroom at 6 feet social distancing. We can fit 70 students in the cafeteria at 6 feet apart. Class cohorts will be maintained, so in essence, you're going to have a cohort of the students in your classroom, whether it's a hybrid model or a full in-person model. This is new information, I've bolded it. I don't have the movement patterns, but in both buildings, there is staff that's working on developing a movement pattern of how students would move about the building. And the goal of all those things is that whole concept of trying to minimize contacts. Because if we want to implement these health and safety requirements, our goal is going to try to minimize contacts as much as we can. And I say that, I'm going to go back a little bit for a second and just go back to this slide. No single principle will effectively lower risk alone, and we won't be able to do all of these principles perfectly all the time. And so as we go through these principles, I want to hit on that piece a little bit of. We're going to establish routines and protocols, we're going to talk about social distancing, but I also want to be honest and fair and say, look, we're going to do our absolute best to enforce them, but it's almost impossible to make sure that every person is 6 feet away from each other all the time. And in your own lives right now, my assumption would be, how you're living your lives right now, you're not always 6 feet away from every single person you have contact with in your life all the time, outside of your household structure. But that doesn't mean we're not striving for that goal. Clearly we are. And establishing movement patterns and those types of things are trying to cut down on that, the interaction between cohorts and to maintain social distancing. And we're going to review student drop-off and dismissal. We've had some questions about that. We know that, based on transportation, I'm jumping ahead in the presentation a little bit, but it's a little stream of consciousness, that as we deal with the transportation issue, we're probably going to have more parents dropping off. So the drop-off procedures are going to have to be different. We recognize that, that's in the planning stage. Ultimately, in my mind, that's not a determining factor of what model we pick. It's not going to be, well, they don't have a good drop-off system, so I'm not going to do the hybrid. I don't support that. I don't think it's a good idea. But I just want to acknowledge that those are the things that we're planning, and we are going to change the drop-off routine actually in both buildings. At the middle high school, 20 desks on average and 3 to 4 feet apart, 15 desks on average and 6 feet apart. At middle high school says average because at the elementary school, our classrooms are all the same size. The kindergarten classrooms are larger, but they're all the same size. The pre-K classrooms are larger, but they're all the same size. Middle high school, we have a little more variation. We have some smaller rooms, we have some bigger rooms. So there are rooms that fit above this number, there's some rooms that fit below this number, and obviously we would adjust to that as we brought students into the building. But on average, 20 desks at 3 to 4 feet of social distancing, 15 desks at 6 feet of social distancing. We can fit 80 students in the cafeteria at 6 feet apart, and I put those two numbers for this presentation are big because I think we are very lucky that we have a large cafeteria in both buildings. The elementary school has a very large cafeteria for an elementary school, and the middle high school has a large cafeteria. So in a full in-person return, we would acknowledge we would not be able to have everybody in the cafeteria, and we'd have to do some lunches in classrooms, different spaces. We talked about gymnasiums. We'd have to really make a plan for how the lunches would occur. It would have to be more grab and go. At the middle high school, we were talking about establishing stations, and the cafeteria staff would actually set up stations around the building to serve lunch, and they're prepared to do that. At the elementary level, it would be delivered to the classroom. That's in a full in-person. In a hybrid model, we can actually have every student eat lunch in the cafeteria. If we reduce our size in half, we can make sure that we have 4 lunches in both buildings, and that those 4 lunches would have under 70 students and there are 80 students in them, and we would not have to have that issue of eating in classrooms, eating in different spaces. It might change what we can serve for lunches, those types of things. And at the middle high school, they're considering outside seating for lunch. They're going to look at some spaces to put out some tables and give kids the opportunity to go outside and have lunch. And not that the elementary is not officially planning that. They're considering it, but I think it's a good chance we're going to have some outside seating areas at the middle high school during our lunches. This back from the Prattle project, this slide. We believe the minimum of 6 feet should be the goal in all settings and situations. And what their research says is that there's a 13% risk of transmission at 0 to 3 feet. There's a 3% risk of transmission from 3 to 6 feet, and at 6 feet or beyond, it's less than a 3% risk of transmission. So that clearly supports that maintaining that social distance is a goal. And so the recommendation of that, of the Prattle project, is that you set up systems that would have the ability to, as much as possible, maintain 6 feet of social distancing. Hand hygiene. Again, students will use hand sanitizer upon entering the bus and building. At the elementary school, each classroom has a sink, and teachers will have students regularly washing their hands. We're also installing hand sanitizer stations, and we've decided we're going to do that in both buildings, at the middle high school and the elementary. Even though the elementary has sinks, they're going to have a hand sanitizing station and a sink. At the elementary school, the plan would be to use the hand sanitizer and wash hands after recess, before and after lunch, at the end of the day, before and after specials. At the middle high school, just more regularly encouraged to use the hand sanitizers. With the older kids, we're not going to say, okay, walk into the room, go use the hand sanitizer, but we'll definitely be encouraging it. We're not going to necessarily schedule it. A big piece here is we actually have just ordered, they just came in. We have 24 touchless sinks that the district has purchased that will be installed in all the bathrooms at the middle high school. So there'll be at least one touchless sink in each bathroom at the middle high. If you don't know, the elementary school already has that. All the sinks in the bathrooms at the elementary school are touchless. And then the fourth message, stay home with sick. If any staff member or student has any of the following symptoms in the past 24 hours, we're requiring them to stay home. You can read the list of requirements. The concept here is know your own health a little bit. So there is a process here in terms of screening. People have talked about what the screening process of the school is going to be, and we're following the recommendations of the DESE guidance, which does put things back on parents to make those decisions, and for staff members to make those decisions. There was a lot of talk early on in this process in June and July of what a school is going to require when they have temperatures taken before they enter the building. There was discussion about the schools purchasing those kind of temperature scanners that walk through, and the recommendations through at least the DESE guidance and the healthcare professionals that they're working with, which is specifically the DESE guidance. I would note, the DESE guidance was done in collaboration with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and was actually supported at the state level by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So that was the group of people that they were working with in terms of developing their guidance. And they determined that a lot of those temperature scanners just have too many false positives and too many false negatives, especially the scanner ones, because it's based on the temperature of your skin, maybe not your core internal temperature. So the recommendation was for the schools to not do specific screening, and to, in essence, put that back on parents and on staff to determine if they have symptoms and need to stay home. Training for staff, students, and parents. I think most people know now that the commissioner has reduced the school year by 10 days to 170 days, and that school must start no later than September 16th. There is a waiver process that school districts could apply to have school start later than that. At our next meeting on Monday, actually, we're going to present a new school calendar to the committee that will incorporate a September 16th start date and 170 days of school for students. And obviously, once the school committee approves that calendar, we will get it out to the community. But why did they reduce the school year by 10 days? And the purpose of these 10 days was to provide professional development for staff on these health and safety measures, technology training, and then planning time for the implementation of whatever model is selected, and planning time for the concept of being able to transition between models. Also training for students and parents on health and safety measures for any form of in-person return or remote learning expectations. So during these 10 days, the administration will be actually setting up some Zoom calls, maybe some in-person trainings. We'll be doing some trainings on the health and safety requirements, what's school going to look like, have some discussions with community and parents during this 10-day period between what was supposed to be the start of school, September 2nd, to now what will probably be our new first day of school, September 16th. So, we transition to the hybrid model here, but I'm going to go back a couple slides just to say that the in-person model is really based on these whole 4 concepts. What are your protocols around safety requirements? Mask and face coverings, physical distancing, hand washing, and staying home when you're sick. Now, the hybrid model also incorporates that, these standards. So, the hybrid model, what we've selected, and I've been in a lot of conversations with regional superintendents. So the South Shore, it's called the Lighthouse Superintendents Group. It's all superintendents from Plymouth up through really Weymouth and Hull, up to Weymouth and Hull, all on the South Shore. All places that have lighthouses. I don't think Carver has a lighthouse though. I'm not sure how we got into the lighthouse superintendents, but we're there. Maybe there's a lighthouse someplace. I just don't know where it is. Well, we obviously, we've been meeting with that group on a weekly basis, and we've been talking about models, and it seems as if the 2 in-school, 3 remote is the most commonly used model in the South Shore, but there are certainly other models. Some school districts are doing every other day as their hybrid plan. I know Plymouth followed their plan, and they're doing Monday remote every other day. So there are varying models of this, but many school districts are using the 2 in, 3 remote that we're proposing as part of our model. I just want to acknowledge there's other ones out there. So in our hybrid model, there would be a group A of students, last names A to L. Group A would attend in person on Mondays and Tuesdays. They would be remote on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The Wednesday would be a remote for all students. So the group A and group B would be together because we're building the classes like we normally would, and then we're splitting them. But on the remote day, all the kids would be together for the remote session, which would be a live session by their classroom teacher. The group B, last names M to Z, just the opposite. So group B is home on Mondays and Tuesdays. They're with the whole group on Wednesday for their remote live lesson, and then they attend in person on Thursdays and Fridays. We're committed in this model to keep families together in terms of there are sometimes situations where there's a household where 2 students have a different last name, so we'll make those adjustments. And then there may be other adjustments we might have to make, maybe for some balancing, maybe for some specific special education students. So the general concept is A through L, but then we're in the process of breaking up those cohorts right now, and there might be a situation here or there that's a tweak. If that were to happen, clearly, obviously, we'd have a lot of communications with the family around that, make sure that worked for them in terms of why they were maybe not in the AL and Z group. But in general concept, that's the theory between the split. And I guess the other thing I want to mention about that is that's going to be cleaner at the elementary school. The reality at the middle high school, especially in your grade 10, 11, 12 courses, you could have one course that only has 15 kids in it, and it could end up being an 11 and 4 split. And that's just a reality. And our goal is to have the students get the courses they want and the courses they signed up for. That would be the priority over making them balanced. So we might have some unbalance there so the kids are getting the courses that they wanted and they selected. And I'll get more into that as we talk about the models. So elementary hybrid, students would have core instruction when they're in school, very similar to a regular day. Wednesdays, all remote days. Students will have live lessons with their teachers and the entire class. Students will have all their specials when they're in school. And so some of the guidance around the allied arts has been a little bit challenging, but we've been working with our allied art teachers and we believe we can meet some of the standards, specifically in band and chorus. So we're feeling comfortable that we're going to offer band and chorus courses at the middle high school. We're going to offer general music at the elementary school, and we're just going to work around the requirements that have been put in place. But we think it would be really detrimental if we weren't able to offer those programs. And they're going to be different, because the reality, and I'm straying from the presentation a little bit, but the reality is, the guidance for band specifically is woodwind instruments can't be played indoors. So you can't play your trumpet, your flute, your baritone sax. I'm sure there's a lot of other woodwind instruments I'm missing. You can't play those indoors. So that hampers band a little bit, obviously. But we've talked to the music teachers and the band director and saying, no, and when we can be outside, I'll be outside. And then when we need to be inside, actually, he's going to establish 3 stations using some percussion instruments, using ukuleles, using pianos, using materials that we have, and the students will get some work on those instruments. And at the high school level, band's elective course. So they're just going to adjust what they're doing a little bit. Band may not look like band always looked, chorus may not look like chorus always looked. But the music teachers are dedicated to keeping the music alive. And there's a lot of things they can do, and we're dedicated to keeping the music alive. Even though when you look at the guidelines, it's like, ooh, this is tough to try to maybe implement. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there a little bit. That all came off of students will have specials, was the concept of the slide. Students will receive live academic instruction and connection on the 2 days they're remote. This is still a work in progress at the elementary school. Last week in the presentation we said it was going to be writing instruction. Now we've shifted a little bit and saying it's going to be live academic instruction. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish 1 teacher at each grade level who's a remote teacher. That teacher is going to provide some live academic instruction for the kids on the days that they're home. So I'll be very specific about this. You're in the A group. You're in school with your teacher on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, you're remote with your teacher, with the whole class. Thursday and Friday, your teacher is teaching the B group. So on Thursday and Friday, there is going to be a remote teacher who is going to do live instruction for those students who are home on Thursday and Friday. Now, it is not going to be a full day of instruction. I'm not trying to promise anybody that it's a full day of instruction, because that remote teacher is actually providing instruction for the whole grade level. So they're going to do several lessons throughout the day for the different classes. It's not on the schedule here because it's really going to be individualized. So if you have Mrs. Spina, just point out an elementary teacher, Mrs. Wall who's here. If you put up Mrs. Wall, if you have Mrs. Wall, you're going to have, your Mrs. Wall's class is going to have a specific time on Thursdays and Fridays that they're going to get live instruction from the remote teacher. That schedule hasn't been finalized yet. Well, obviously, we're going to publicize that to parents as we get closer to the school year if a hybrid model was selected. And obviously, if a hybrid model is not selected, we have a little more time to work on it. But that's the concept behind it. Hybrid at the middle high school. And I want to talk here a little bit about the big shift we've made at the middle high school is we're going to a block schedule. What a block schedule is that in our old schedule at the middle high school, students had a 6-period day and a 6 periods a day and a 7-class schedule. So 1 class dropped off. So if you, on day 1, you had periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no period 7. On day 2, you had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no 1, etc. It was a waterfall schedule. So a student could have, most students had 6 classes in a study. Some students had 7 classes. And those classes met for 58 minutes every day, except for the day they dropped off from the waterfall schedule. As part of the transition to these 3 remote plans, the middle high school scheduling committee decided that adopting a block schedule would be beneficial. I'm going to talk about the reasons why in a second. But what a block schedule is instead of having 6 classes a day and a 7-period schedule, students would have 4 classes a day. They'd have 4 blocks. The blocks would be, if an in-person model, it's 85 minutes, and a remote model is saying 75 minutes of instruction. And they would have And so it reduces the number of courses students have. And they'd have 4 courses first semester, 4 courses second semester. So students would actually take 8 courses in a year instead of 6 or 7 as they're doing now. So some students will pick up 2 extra additional courses over the course of the year, some won't. There are a lot of variations within the block schedule. Sometimes, as a specific example, your science classes at the high school level for AP, for advanced placement, those courses are often full year. And that's what we're proposing in our block schedule, is if you're taking AP Biology, AP Physics, that course would be a full year course and you'd actually have it both semesters. AP Calculus would be offered both semesters. So there are some exceptions. We've been in the process of taking our old schedule and putting it into a block schedule. And that process isn't completed yet, but we're close. And what I can assure everybody is that the levels are going to be maintained. So every course that was being offered in our traditional schedule is being offered in the block schedule. So Honors US History is still going to be Honors US History. All our AP courses are still running. In essence, any course that you had scheduled to take in the old system, you're going to be offered in the new system. Now, some of those courses might be second semester versus first semester. So what was the rationale behind this decision? There were really 3 factors. Number 1, it creates less transitions. So any in-person model you're in, whether it's a full in-person return or a hybrid model, students move less because they have fewer classes. So reducing contacts. In the hybrid model or remote model, and these were really the key factors, is that students will have less classes at a time. So last year in remote learning, if you were a middle high school student, you had 6 courses you had to follow in your remote learning plan. Now you only have to have 4. So there's less things you're responsible for, less things that you have to track and stay on top of. Same for teachers. In a traditional schedule, our teachers would have, on average, 5 classes of 20 to 25 students. They could have 100 to 125 students who they'd be responsible for tracking in a remote model. In a block schedule, teachers teach 3 of the 4 each semester. They teach 6 classes for the year. So if you keep those same averages of 20 to 25 students, in a block schedule, a teacher has 60 to 70 students. So it reduces everyone's responsibility when you're not seeing the students every day. And they saw a real value in that, in trying to make any kind of remote piece we were going to do, whether hybrid remote or full remote, more manageable for students and more manageable for teachers. And would we be making this recommendation to move to a block schedule if we were not in our current circumstances? I can very directly say no. But it was the scheduling committee's recommendation to the overall reopening committee and to the administration that it's the model that made the most sense based on where we are. And I agree. So I will say I have a little bit of personal experience with this. I live in Taunton. Taunton has had a block schedule for many years. I have a son who was a freshman last year, is going to be a sophomore next year. I've had 2 kids who graduated from Taunton Public Schools who went through all 4 years of a block schedule. And from looking at the last year of the remote, I have another son, there's 2 of him. I have another son who's in middle school, who didn't have a block schedule. He had a more traditional schedule, 6-7 period day. And then I had my son who was in high school in the block schedule. And I saw that difference between only having to manage 4 courses remotely versus having to manage 6 or 7 courses remotely as a middle school student. Now, the interesting part is we're not advocating, we're not advocating a block schedule for grades 6 and 7 because we have our teams. We want to keep our team structure and model for 6 and 7. So we're changing the schedule there a little bit. But I saw the value, and I actually thought at the time, and I did not make the suggestion to the scheduling committee, they came up with it on their own. But at the time I thought, in a remote setting, there's a benefit to being in a block. And I'm supportive of making that move. So this block schedule would have to be implemented whether we're full in-person, hybrid, or remote for students in grades 8 through 12. For students in grades 6 and 7, I will say there are not many, I don't know of a middle school that runs a block schedule. For grades 6 and 7, we do have teams. Our goal would be to maintain the teams. We adjusted the schedule a little bit, and we created a homeroom advisory period, and then a 6-period day where the students would take 6 classes, including their specials. In the past, students had 6 classes and then what they called an academic workshop. We're replacing the academic workshop with this homeroom advisory support period, where the goal would be the homeroom teacher would work with making sure their students were on track. And that would give us 50-minute teaching periods at the 6th and 7th grade level while maintaining the teams. And the teams allow us to maintain the cohorts. So in terms of that social distancing, that contacting piece, we're going to be able to put the alpha team students in a class will be able to actually travel together to their specials and also to their academic courses. The only place that's not true is if they take band or chorus. Band or chorus, they would cross over with the other teams, and we'll talk to parents about that. If that's a real concern for a parent, we can address that issue. Remote learning expectations in general. And I'm not going to read this slide to you, but the key points here are, well, we're going to make sure everybody has a device. We've actually purchased 400 additional Chromebooks. Right now, I will say that those Chromebooks are on backer, and they're saying we're not going to get them all until the end of September. We're working hard. The state's actually trying to assist school districts in getting devices because there's just such a crunch across the country to get devices. So there's a possibility we might have to start the year in a similar fashion that we did last year, saying if you have your own device, that would be great, but we can certainly give you one if you don't. But by October 1st, we'd be able to have everybody have a district-issued device and be one-on-one. So we're going to issue devices to everybody. But the big differences in the remote learning is students are going to be required to attend and participate in live lessons. Students are going to be graded. There's a schedule. So we just showed you the hybrid schedule, and we're going to show you the remote schedule in a second. So there's a schedule of when things are going to happen. So our goal at any kind of remote, either the hybrid remote or in the full remote schedule, is to increase the rigor. Because we realized last year that, I don't know if it was beneficial, that it was very open-ended. So it's going to be a lot less open-ended in terms of what requirements are for everybody in that model. So transitioning to remote. So middle high school remote plan, live lessons for each blocker period each day. Block schedule aligns with the full in-person and the hybrid model. We just talked about that a lot. Homeroom will meet daily with a small group. Personalized and help with attendance, resolve issues, check and support students. So in essence, in a remote model, we're going to say we're following the scheduled day. And students are going to be expected to tune into their classes and join their classes. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be looking at their screen for the entire day. The teacher within that class is going to have discretion to do some live instruction, maybe put them into breakout groups to do some work, maybe even say, hey, here's something I've shared with you. I'm going to give you 10 minutes, 15 minutes to work on that, and then we'll come back and we'll rejoin the Zoom the meets at 8:30. So I don't want parents looking to say, hey, this is 6 hours of looking at a computer screen. Because there is some, I think there's concerns about that, and I would have concerns about that. So that's going to be a transition piece of working with our teachers. But the concept here is there's going to be a schedule that people are going to be asked to follow. The same thing at the elementary level. So there'll be, the core academic blocks will be happening. Live lessons will occur during academic blocks. Obviously, what we put here is developmentally differentiated screen time. Younger children are live for less time. In terms of what's appropriate for their grade and age level if we're in a full remote model in terms of the amount of screen time. But that whole, again, concept of your teacher will be giving you a very specific schedule on when live lessons will be occurring each day. We are going to maintain our intervention model. So intervention will be broken into some small group differentiation. I know one of the questions I've gotten a few times is about Title I and intervention and how that's going to look. So I think there's been some discussion that our reading interventionists in a hybrid model, I'm sorry if I'm spraying on this, that our reading interventions on the hybrid model may be our remote teachers, if we go back to that model and talk about that. That's not set in stone. It really depends on like I said in that kind of opening statement, some of our real specific plans in each of these models really depends on what model we select as a school committee, who decides to stay home, because we're going to get this in a second, but every family is going to have the option to say, I'm going to go full remote and not be involved in in-person learning. And what our staffing is. There could be staffing concerns for various reasons in each model. So, no one's been specifically assigned to anything yet. But what we're committed to is we will continue to provide Title I services, as we have in the past. Those services will be provided during intervention blocks or differentiated support that you see in this remote model. And that those services will be provided by Carver Public School teaching staff. Special education in all models. This is right from the DESE guidance. Students must receive all services documented in their IEPs through in-person instruction, remote instruction, or a combination of both, with an emphasis on providing in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible, abiding by the current necessary health and safety requirements. So, specifically, they've asked you to prioritize in-person instruction for two groups, preschool-age students and students with significant or complex needs or disabilities. So our intention is, currently, that no matter what model is selected by the school committee, the recommendation would be that we would do an in-person return for our preschool with a maximum class size of 8 to 10 students, and our intensive special education programs, K-12. Our intensive special ed programs have actually been in person this summer, so they've already been attending in person 3 days a week, Monday through Wednesdays, for a 5-week program. And next week's the last week, so far, knock on wood, things have gone really well in that in-person return, and it's been a real positive, and the families have been happy with that. The special education department will also work with teachers, staff, and parents to identify some moderate special education students, or some of our EL population, our English learners, who could benefit from an in-person return to best fulfill their services identified as EL students or as special education students on their IEP. So we're still meeting on that, and we'd actually be contacting families directly and working with those families. We're not going to say to a family, obviously if the school district chose full in-person, and that was the vote of the school committee, then we're saying everyone it's full in-person. If the school committee chose something different, a hybrid or a full remote, then we would reach out to those families and say, look, we're looking to have an in-person return, we'd like you to come 4 days a week. How do you feel about that? And we make those individual decisions with families for these specific programs. The last piece, remote learning for selected students. And I want to try to make sure that this is really clear to the community, that the school district could choose, the school committee could vote on Monday night for a full remote return. Or, the APC was advocating a phased-in remote to a hybrid. No matter what the school committee chooses, even if they choose a full remote, we're going to ask every family if you want to stay remote. If you have that option, it's actually a requirement in the DESE guidance that families will have the option to stay remote if they choose. And so you as a family could say, you know what, even if we start remote, you could say, I'm not really interested in transitioning. I know that if you're looking at transition on November 1st, I'm just making up a date, that November 1st I'm still not going to be ready. And I really want this to be a full remote year. You can choose that. You're going to have the option to do that. If we choose one of the in-person models, either full in-person or hybrid, then we're going to ask families, would you like to stay remote to start the school year? And we're going to ask families to fill out, in essence, a remote learning, a remote learning application. I'm not going to do this through surveys because I think it's going to be more efficient to say, if you want to stay full remote, here's an application you have to fill out. Your application is not going to be denied, but just that key information, fill out the application, say to us, I'm making a declaration that I'm going to be full remote. And we're actually going to do the same thing for transportation. I don't think it makes sense to survey everybody and say, when are you going to come, when are you not going to come? We're going to go like we would during the beginning of the year. Fill out your bus transportation form. If you're using Carver, if your intention is to use Carver School Transportation, here's the form on the website. I'll email it home to everybody. Fill out the form and send it back to us. And we're going to ask for a quick turnaround on that after the school committee makes a decision. because we haven't built any bus routes yet. So we got to start doing that. And so we're going to ask people to fill out forms versus doing a survey. Because survey, I feel like I'm going to miss people. If I say, hey, you got to fill out the form if this is what you want, and get people to fill out those forms. So we'll talk a little bit more of that. So I just wanted to be clear on that distinction of, that's why I said there's almost 4 plans. It's your full in-person, it's your hybrid, it's your district chooses remote, or it's you choose remote. So those are 4 different things. If it's the district chooses remote, then it's going to be all of our staff doing that remote teaching. If it's going to be you choose remote, then we're going to place you onto what's called a learning platform. So students who select to stay remote will be placed on one of the 2 learning platforms. Ingenuity is a program we use at the middle high school, 6 through 12. It's a program we've used the last couple of years, actually, for some students who had to be home for various reasons. And then the Department of Education actually announced today that they have approved 2 platforms for K-5. One is also Ingenuity. The other one is, it's called FLVS Global, Florida Virtual School. We're going to start investigating both of those programs. We've already looked at Ingenuity a little bit for the elementary school. We're going to look at the Florida Virtual School, because that was the other one that was approved by the Department of Education. As I said, that information was just made public today. So I can't really speak knowledgeably about that program. But over the next week, we're going to be investigating both of those programs and making a decision whether our elementary students will be placed on the FLVS Global or the Ingenuity program, because those are the DESE-approved platforms. The school district will assign staff to support and monitor students' progress on the learning platforms. I want to make this key point that students will be invited to participate in extracurricular activities and school-wide community events. So if you choose to stay full remote, for whatever reason you made that decision, we still want you to be part of the school community. So if we're doing extracurriculars, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation, we're going to invite you to participate. If we're having, the elementary school last year had some great, not that the middle high school didn't, but the elementary school had some great community building events at the end of the year. The parades, those were great events. Well, we're going to invite those students who are involved in remote to participate in those things. Because we want to keep you as part of the school community, because hopefully we'll get to the point where we're past this and everybody's going to come back to school and be with us. So we respect families' choice to do that, and we want families to still be involved in school. The other point of clarification I'll make here is, if you read the plan specifically states that, if you select remote, you have to stay on that remote platform until at least January, until at least the transition. And ultimately, we want to work with families. It depends what makes sense, especially at the middle high school level. At the middle high school level, the engineering program puts you into courses. And if for some reason you made a decision in December, hey, I want to come back, we'd have to really look, where are you in those courses? How close are you to completing them? Would it make sense for you to stay in that course and complete it, earn your credits? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it makes sense for you to transition back. The goal of the course, Ingenuity has a pretty wide platform, and we're gonna place you pretty closely into the courses you would be placed here. So we could make the argument that, yeah, you can just transition back into the classes here because we're offering those same courses here. Maybe you're in those courses in a different place. So we're going to work with families in terms of making that transition, but in some places it may make sense that you make a decision at the semester breaks in January, kind of the halfway point of the year. And ultimately, you have the right to stay on that program for all of next year. Now, I don't know what's going to happen after that. It all depends where we are with the pandemic. So I also want to be clear that this idea of selecting remote learning is an option for next school year. But there's been no declaration that it would be an option for the following school year. I think we're very far away from making decisions about the following school year. We're having enough concerns and making decisions for this school year. Facilities and operations, any kind of hybrid or full return. Kids are coming into the building. During the day, the custodial staff is going to focus on cleaning high traffic areas, general trash, and high touch points. So they're going to be going around and sanitizing, cleaning doorknobs, door handles, push doors, entryways. We're going to actually change their responsibilities a little bit during the day so that becomes their focus when they're in school, and then obviously supporting lunch. The guidance does say you can ask students to wipe their own desks and use the wipes to do that. So we're going to have wipes in every classroom. We are going to ask students in grades 8 through 12, or 6 and 7 if they are transitioning, that if they enter a room, that they clean their desk before sitting at that desk. We are going to have the wipes in every room. At night, the custodians are going to sanitize and disinfect every desk. And then we're also going to refill, check all the sanitizers, soap, and then just do the general cleaning that we would normally do. We do have this Protexis electrostatic sprayer, which is a fogger to disinfect all the rooms. We're going to do that twice a week. Part of the concept of the hybrid model is we would use that disinfecting fogger on the Tuesdays and Friday nights in between the two groups, so we would fog the building between cohorts. To fog the entire building takes 6 or 7 hours. The fogger sits, it doesn't have to get wiped off, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes to dry. I actually showed a demonstration of it at one of our school committee meetings, and we actually started using the fogger last year. If you remember, we had a little, especially at the elementary school, we just had a little sickness outbreak. And it was all kinds of things. It was some flu, it was some strep, it was some sore throats, we just had we had a little stretch where we just had a lot of kids out, and we actually started using that fogger on a regular basis at the elementary school last year. I think we did the middle high school once or twice, maybe twice, prior to the whole COVID thing happening and the whole COVID thing happening. We've actually purchased more of those sprayers. We're going to have 4 in the district when school starts. 2 are handheld, 2 are backpack. And then the other thing I just want people to know, if you wanted any more specific information about any of these products that we're using, we have cut sheets on them. I actually have them with me tonight. I don't have a copy for everybody to hand out, but I just want to say I do have them if people have questions about specific products that are being used. They're all green. They're all from a company called Hilliard, except for the Protexis electric sprayer that's from a different company. And they're all green, eco-friendly products that I can give you more information about. So if you reach out to me via email or something like that, I can get you the information on all the products we're using.
Is that information on the website?
That is not on the website, and I guess we could put those on the website.
It'd be easy to put on the website.
Gina, can you make a note of that? Thank you.
Thank you.
And the HVAC system, both buildings provide outside air as required by ASHRAE specifications for public school buildings, which is 15 cubic feet per minute per person of how much air is supposed to be coming into each space. The same amount of air is being brought in from the outside and is exhausted from approximately the same amount of air being brought in from the outside is exhausted from different areas from the space to provide what's called air exchange. It maintains a slightly positive pressure in the building. In this building, the vent system is for each individual space. So each individual space has its own air exchange, including this auditorium. Now, this is a big space, so the units in this auditorium only exchange air from the outside to the auditorium. And that is true of every classroom in this building. I know sometimes people have concerns about this building because it's older. So we've been going, but in some ways I don't want to say it's a better system than the elementary school, because the elementary school is state-of-the-art. But we will say at the elementary school, the exchange is by wing. So it is bringing the same amount of outside air, it's bringing in all the classrooms, but then it's exchanging in the wing of 6 classrooms, not just each individual classroom. The elementary school system does have a nice function, which I'll talk about in a second. But staying here, we're doing our annual preventive maintenance, and it is annual, we do this every year. The custodial staff and our maintenance staff in the town has been going through each individual unit, each individual classroom, to inspect and repair and change filters on a quarterly basis. And any issues that are found are being updated by our maintenance staff. And if we need to, obviously we'll bring an outside contractor. Right now we have not had the need to do that for the units that we've inspected, and we've inspected most of the units in this building. So that is going on, and right now we're doing a total investigation of the HVAC system in this building. Elementary school is controlled by a computerized automated building system. And one of the things, and I guess I said this last meeting, so I should have done more of this week, but I didn't, I'll be honest. Dave Seentoff, our facilities director, said that one of the functions we can set at the elementary school is it can do a total reflush of air over 1 hour. And it would bring in 100% all outside air, and we can do that twice a day. For some reason, you're not supposed to do that while the building's occupied. So that was the question I was supposed to ask, because that doesn't fully make sense to me of why you can't do that while the building's occupied. That's only supposed to happen when the building is empty. So what our plan would be is that, around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then again late at night, we do a total flush and bring in 100% outside air into the elementary school. And the other thing we just want people to know is that we bought 4 bipolar ionization units, which was actually recommended from the DESI guidance. It helps disperse airborne in a specific area for the nurses area. So it was a recommendation specifically for our nurses areas. Transportation, 1 seat per student, unless the same household, so kids in the same household can sit together on the bus, but only 2. If there's 3 from the household, they can't be all 3 of them in the same seat. That limits us to 23 students per bus, maybe a little bit more if there's families. Students are going to actually have assigned seats, and the seating is going to kind of be inside, outside, if that makes sense. So as you go down the bus aisle, first student would be on the window, next student would be on the aisle, next student would be on the window. We're going to put X's on the seats of where they have to sit, and they're going to assign everybody seats. In here it talks about double, triple runs. That's really in an in-person model. If we're in a full in-person model, it may require us to do multiple bus runs. In a hybrid model, we think we're going to come close. We don't know. We have to wait until we find out who's going to take the bus. But once we get a declaration of who's going to take the bus, we think that there's a chance we'll be able to do everything in 1 run in a hybrid model. May require a second run here or there. We'll know more information about that once we know who's taking the bus. So obviously routes will be posted much later than normal. And just a reminder that masks are a requirement for all grade levels on the bus. Our goal would be, once the school committee makes a decision next week, if it is going to be some sort of an in-person return, then again, we'd ask people to fill out that form. We're going to ask for a quick turnaround so we can start planning on bus routes and hopefully be able to get the bus routes out. School starts on the 16th, by the first week in September, get people's bus routes out so they know where they're going to be, because they might be a little different. So that's going to be, we'll work on that quickly. Food service, we talked about this a little bit. We're going to provide meals no matter what model we're in. If we're in a full person, it's going to be full in person. It's going to be a mix of classrooms, cafeteria, general area outside. We're going to have to use a bunch of spaces in the building. If it's hybrid, as I said, we believe in both buildings. We'll be able to do it in the cafeteria. If it's remote, it will be grab and go, just like we did in the spring. An interesting thing, we don't know the answer on this yet, but the Department of Nutrition has actually requested that all meals across the country be classified as this SOS option, which is SSO option, which is actually free meal service during the summer is the program, but that would be extended through the year. And so there is a chance that we'll be notifying the community in the next week or so that any meal served in the Carver Public Schools will be free to all students. The nice thing about that is it eliminates a touch point. No one has to put their code in, no one has to deal with the you don't have to have that direct interaction with the cafeteria worker. Obviously we need to, the cafeteria has to track those lunches because we have to report to the government how many lunches we sold each day. So there'll be staff doing that, but it won't have to have that direct point of contact. So that would be a really nice thing if that's able to happen. Extracurricular activities. The MIA has postponed the start of fall sports until September 14th. There is a highlighted piece in here. This week, the commissioner, during his conference with superintendents, stated that if a district starts remote, he sees it as being very unlikely that district would be able to participate in any fall sports programs that we're offering. Saying that if you're making a decision to be a remote district, you're saying, based on what's happening in our community, we need to be remote. So students should not be participating in athletics. That is not an official statement of the MIA yet, but the commissioner did state that to the superintendents and did ask superintendents to share that with their school committees. Extracurricular activities will be considered based upon the model that's enacted. Currently, we're not allowing outside groups to use inside facilities at this time besides the Y. The Y is at the elementary school, providing daycare at this time. And if we have an in-person return, actually, quite honestly, even if we're remote, then Y will probably still provide daycare. They've been doing that service all this summer. And really, that's a pretty open statement. You know, basically, we're going to say to those people that run extracurricular activities, I'm just thinking of examples: student government, environmental club, the running club at the elementary school, the Coyote Cares, that we're going to say to the teachers who run those programs and say, what could this look like in a remote model? What could this look like in a hybrid model? Make a proposal to us. If this makes sense, then we'll offer those programs out to the school community. Because we don't want to be devoid of extracurricular activities if we're in a hybrid or remote model. So more information to come. And I think that's all I have, except for I am hosting a parent forum tomorrow night to answer questions. I know that there may be some questions raised here today, also as comments, but there is a parent forum. I'm a little limited on time for that. I scheduled it from 6 to 7:30 because I do have an appointment at 7:30 for a different school-related issue that I have to go to tomorrow evening. But so 6 to 7:30 will be a Zoom. My intention that tomorrow night is to not make any presentation and to just use that time to respond to people's questions. By Monday, August 10th, we have to submit the final plan to DESE, which is the document that was released yesterday. That is what's going to be submitted to the Department of Education, saying here are our 3 plans. We're also required by August 10th to notify the Department of Education of our school committee vote. So you're going to hear, and you probably already have heard, that many school committees throughout Massachusetts, really every school committee is charged with making a decision by August 10th. The Department of Education is aware that our meeting is August 10th, and I'll probably notify them in the morning of the 11th. So I've notified them of that, and they said that that's fine, that works for them. So that's all I have.
Okay.
If you want to open it up to public comment.
This brings us to the public comment portion of our meeting. I'm going to lay down a few ground rules first for participation. We have 1 microphone right here in the center aisle. If you have a comment, you can line up coming down the aisle, but leave your masks on and leave 6 feet distance between you and the next person. You can take your mask off to speak at the microphone. Please be a Carver resident. When you address the committee, address the chair with your comment or a question, and please state your name and your screen address. You don't have to give the number, your house number, if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And I believe, please keep all comments to the present topic at hand to be open. So that being said, do we have any movement in the audience for questions or comments? One over here, to the left. And also for Zoom participants, if we have questions on Zoom, we're going to alternate questions from in-person to Zoom, back and forth.
Andy,
Yeah.
is there a time?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Try to keep it around 3 minutes or so. Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Good evening, Sean Morgan, Cedar Drive. Good evening. Thank you to the school committee and thank you to the superintendent for the opportunity to speak. While recognizing that the district has to submit plans by August 10th to DESE, there's still a lot of questions remaining. One of the biggest ones centering around the fact that will schools be safe and open? Over the last few months, it's abundantly clear that the reason for the small number of cases of COVID-19 in children is due to the fact that the correct decision was made in the spring and schools were closed during the first wave of the outbreak. However, I've been watching many districts around the country begin their new academic calendar. In the last few weeks, we're seeing cases spike with huge numbers, especially among children. For example, in Tennessee, there are 6,827 school-aged children with positive COVID tests as of July 18. 10 days later, when schools had opened, that number had risen by a third to 9,085. In Georgia, there's the case of the summer camp in which 261 from 344 campers and staff were tested positive at a rate of 76%. And in the same state, the Gwinnett County school systems had to push back the start of their school year as 260 employees tested positive or had been in contact with a positive test within the school system. I'm sure there are many other examples throughout the country and throughout the world. But again, one of the biggest factors is that it's been described that schools are not methods of carrier for COVID. But again, that is the reason for that is that schools were closed during the first outbreak. We need to make sure that the correct decision is being made, and the correct decision, in my opinion as a parent, is that remote learning or hybrid learning are the only avenues that we can explore right now to ensure that children are safe. And I understand that there are economic decisions to be made for families and it puts many families in a tough position. But our goal as parents, our goal as educators, our goal as leaders in the schools district is to ensure that all children are safe at all times. And with regards to that, in the remote learning aspect, I know Superintendent Leaf and I talked this morning, that there is more work to be done there to ensure that those families who do decide to remain home are still engaged in the school community, that they are still engaged beyond just extracurriculars, but have a plan in place to bring them back to the school community when they choose to return, whether that be in January or that be sooner, as the case may be. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And thank you for the email this morning as well. All right, we have a Zoom.
Yes, so we have a list. The first person who would like to speak is Corinne Sherwood from 64 Purchase Street. Corinne, I will unmute you and then you can speak.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Corinne Sherwood. I am an education support professional at Carver Middle High School. Tonight, I am speaking as an educator and a member of the Carver. I am not speaking on behalf of the EAPC tonight. I'm going to repeat what has been said 1,000 times this summer by thousands of educators. I want nothing more than to be back in the building with my students and my colleagues. It is without a doubt the best way to learn and the best way for me to do my job, but it is not safe. The children want and need to see their friends, and they need to interact with their peers and have important conversations with their teachers, but it is not safe. Educators know this. They know that the bond between a teacher and student is one that thrives in a physical, safe, and stimulating educational environment, but it is not safe. Parents and families of the community, I am so sorry that you have been put into this position. You should not have to worry about finding childcare when usually your children would be safe in their classroom, but please do not punish the teachers, staff, and other students because the government failed you and did not provide the support that your kids deserve. The term social emotional health has been thrown around a lot in these discussions. Without a doubt, the mental health and wellness of our students is critical, especially during this time. All the children have experienced trauma. Spending the last 5 months living in a pandemic and seeing the death toll rise on the news is traumatic. This trauma will not be healed if we go back to in-person learning, whether in a hybrid model or a full in-person model. Imagine the trauma your child will experience if their best friend, their teacher, or even their family member dies because of COVID-19. This is a real possibility, even in a hybrid model. The odds of that happening? I don't know, but I am not willing to find out. I know it sounds tempting to go back because COVID-19 cases are low or seemingly non-existent in Carver. Do not be fooled. Cases are creeping up in Massachusetts. Dr. Ashish Jha, the director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, has seen a 50% increase in the number of newly reported COVID-19 cases to the point that the state is averaging about 400 a day, combining confirmed and probable cases. Cases are not going down. Please consider that we live near Cape Cod, one of America's most popular vacation destinations. People from all over the country are traveling here and not quarantining like the state is recommending. It is impossible to make everyone happy. I know this, the educators of Carver know this, the families know this, and the school committee knows this. I hope that we can also agree that it is possible to make everyone safe, and that is with a remote learning model. There are several districts in Massachusetts that have committed to a full remote model. These include Worcester, Leominster, West Boylston, Webster, Somerville, Northbridge, Franklin, Dayton Rehoboth, Framingham, and South Hadley. Somerville Superintendent Mary Skipper and School Committee Chair Carrie Norman said, The safety and health of our students, staff, and families is and will remain our top priority. We must follow their lead. I keep hearing that these decisions are hard to make. And while I appreciate all of the hard work that the reopening committees and administration have done to prepare for the fall, I do not believe this should have ever been a hard decision. When one member or hundreds of members of our school community is at risk of losing their life, it is obvious to me that we need to take every step in preventing that. Even one life at risk is too many. To the school committee, when you vote for the return to school model, you must pick remote. Health and safety must come first, and the school is not safe unless it is safe for all. You have a choice. Choose to be the school committee that considers everyone's health and safety first and foremost. Choose to be the school committee that protects its community, its educators, and its students. And choose to be the school committee that keeps everyone alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Do we have another in-person comment from the audience? Please state your name and your address if you don't mind.
My name is Diane Carver, on that street. And
Sorry, if you could just try to get on the mic and speak
Just pull it down.
speak a little louder.
I have 3 grandchildren that I'm raising that go to the Carver High School. And I was listening to the radio the other day, and there was a woman down Cape Cod who was commenting on the way schools used to be. I mean, I grew up, we had one classroom, we stayed in that room all day. And she was saying that it makes sense for children to come into school, stay in their homeroom for the day, and the only people traveling in the hallways would be the teachers switching classrooms. And that would cut down on the interaction with the children because, you know, you can't force kids not to be hugging each other and doing these things. They're going to do it, especially the high school kids. And that's all I wanted to say. It just makes sense to me, even if you go back with the, you know, the hybrid type situation for the kids to stay put. One desk for the whole year. You know, they keep their space clean. And we, you know, it just limits all that traffic and interaction in the hallway and things, you know? And anything they need can just be kept in their backpacks at their side. They don't have to deal with lockers and all of this, you know what I mean? So, it makes good sense to me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Meredith, we have another Zoom
Yes.
question?
Yep, the next person on the list is Leanne Smith from 4 Red Tail Lane in Carver. Leanne, I'm going to ask you to unmute now.
Technology.
Leanne, if you are still on the call, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay, we will move to the next person and see if we can get Leanne back.
What was Leanne's last name?
Smith. The next person, oh,
Hi, sorry about that.
that's okay.
So, my question is, if you guys decide on the hybrid model, are you planning to do any accommodations for the kids, like with the last names? I want to give just a specific example, maybe someone is in the same situation as me. So before, when we just did the remote learning, I was in furlough, so I was at home, and I am a healthcare provider too, but now I'm working, and my hours are actually on the same dates that my kids are scheduled to be home. So I want to know if there will be accommodations to switch, because I think it's an important consideration to be a little bit more flexible with the initials of the last name, because it may not fit everybody, and especially with the difficulties in finding childcare. I personally had to make 18 calls to find childcare for this summer, and it's just not something that is available. So I like everything that was presented. I think everything makes sense. I do want everybody to be safe, but I think we have to have more realistic, like, options, that I understand not everybody's gonna be happy, but I also think the goal would be to have the kids learning with whatever situation we pick. That's all.
Thank you, Leanne. Scott, do you want to address that?
So at this time, our intention is not to provide parent choice. So I'm going to give personally, I feel as if I'm willing to look at the greatness of situations, but this would be a tough one to be gray on, because ultimately, once you allow one person to choose, you really have to, in my mind, allow everyone to choose, and we would just have to, we'd have to say, okay, but which would you prefer? And I don't know if that would allow us to get to a point where we achieve our goal of trying to maintain as much balance as we can if we allowed individual choice on what days students were in. So we are going to be willing to make accommodations in regards to households and making sure that students in the same household would be able to attend the same days.
Okay. Do we have someone else in the audience who'd like to come to the microphone with a question or a comment? Anyone? Don't be shy, this is your chance to have your opinions heard or questions answered.
Just as a comment, when you come to the microphone, if you could just speak loud so people at home can hear you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Don't worry.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Jen Utley, McFarland Road. Am I close enough?
And maybe a little closer.
Jen Utley, McFarland Road. So I'm just curious, what, if we do the hybrid or the full return, what is the threshold for returning back to remote? Like is there a certain number of cases? If we had 5 COVID cases, if we had 10 COVID cases, is there a certain threshold of cases that we would then say, okay, this is not safe anymore, we're returning to full remote? And if it's okay, I have one more question after.
Sure.
So the guidance from the Department of Education's response to that question, so right now our response to that question is that every positive case that you had in your school community would be reported to the Department of Public Health and to the local Board of Health, and that the administration would work with the local Board of Health to determine when you'd have to transition models, quarantine a group of students, etc. So they're basically saying you deal with it on an individual basis, work with the local Board of Health, and make decisions. The new information that's come out on that in the past week is the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, is saying that he's trying to work with the governor and the Mass Department of Public Health to establish metrics. And the goal would be that the metrics will be used statewide for determining transition between models. So those metrics have not yet been established, but we're being told that they will be by the end of August, and that when we actually return to school, we'd have some official metrics in place that would allow school committees, local boards of health to make decisions about transitioning between models. And so there's been some discussion in some districts that once these metrics are released, if they are released, that you'd establish some deadlines is the right term, some dates in terms of transition between models. And then also they would use them on a reactive basis, that if all of a sudden there was a spike of cases, you hit the metrics, you go over the numbers, then you got to return to full remote, or et cetera, et cetera.
Would we as parents know what those metrics?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the metrics are right now, so I can't tell you, but once I get them.
Would we know what they are before the deadline
No.
to have to make a decision?
No. I said no, that was a strong statement. I'd be very surprised if those metrics were released prior to the time in which you had to make a decision. But ultimately, I mean, we're going to ask you to make a decision, probably fairly quickly, because the reality is we have to start planning. So even in terms of, let's say, if we chose a hybrid model, then we have to know who's going to choose to be remote, because that could affect our cohorts, and it could affect So this is where I said at the beginning, some questions I'm not going to be able to answer, and some things are going to change. I want to be very clear that some things might be different when the practical reality of the implementation of the models versus the theoretical model. And so maybe the alphabet changes. I know that's hard, but hope that would happen quickly because, let's say we had a huge group of students, A through C, who decided to stay home remote, and we're going to be unbalanced across the district. So then maybe we would change how we're going to break out the cohorts and alphabetically. So some of these things are contingent upon other decisions. So I think that once the school committee makes a decision, we'll be asking for a pretty quick turnaround in terms of you making a declaration of whether you want to stay remote, filling out that application with a deadline of probably within a week or so. So within the next 2 weeks, we're going to be asking people to make a decision. If the metrics come out before that, absolutely, I'll publish them to the community the day I get them, I will publish them. But based on the conversations I've heard, that's probably not going to be in place. I guess the last part of that answer to that question would be, ultimately this is fluid. We want students back in school, and parents have the right to choose remote. So you could declare, it's going to be a hardship on us, but it's a hardship we're going to have to reality. It's a reality. Is you could declare, I'm going to do. We chose full in person. You say, I'm doing it. And then a week before you say, you know what, I'm not doing it. And you fill out the remote application. I'm going to honor that remote application. I'm not going to say, well, no, the first application, you didn't tell them, you didn't meet the deadline, you got to go now. And vice versa. The goal is to transition, if you chose full remote, and the metrics were really positive, they came out with these metrics, and you say, you know what, I looked at the metrics of state established, and Carver's doing really well, and it seems like we continue to do really well, and I do want to send them. I said remote, but I want to send my son or daughter to school. I'm not going to say, no, you got to stay remote, we don't want your student back in school. So it's going to be fluid in many ways. But ultimately, there is going to be a deadline in the next couple of weeks, we're going to ask you to make that declaration.
One of the things we haven't
Just
talked
stop planning.
Right. One of the things we haven't talked about as a committee with the administration is setting up certain milestones. We're looking at it as the positive view of bringing kids back. So say things get just better and better and better. I mean, the last several weeks, Carver has had, I don't think, any positive cases. So we're actually in a pretty good place right now. But
So just as a point of clarification, we were actually notified yesterday that there have been 2 positive cases in Carver in the month of July. One was, I don't remember the exact dates, but there were 2 cases in the month of July.
We're reporting.
July 5th and July 22nd.
Okay.
21st, sorry.
21st.
All right, so,
But the reality is, over the past 6 weeks, there's been 2 positive cases.
okay. But you understand my point, right? If things get better and better, we're trying to bring more kids back to actually come back to a full in-person school model.
Is there some, what is the plan in terms of substitutes? Like when you talk about, it makes so much sense, anybody that has any, signs of illness, including teachers, obviously they need to stay home. But if everyone who has a cough or has sneezes or has a slight fever stays home, do we have enough substitutes?
Obviously, we're going to do our best to have as many substitutes as we can.
Okay.
But ultimately, that could be a factor in making decisions in terms of transitioning models.
Thank you very much. All right, do we have another Zoom question?
We do, yep. I'm going to ask Liz DePercio of 123 Plymouth Street to unmute. She's next on the list.
Hello?
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, everything I say comes with an understanding that everyone is coming from a place of concern and good intention. We need to be mindful, kind, and understanding of each other. We may not agree, but standing together regardless of the ultimate decision is the most important. Can you hear me?
Yes, only everyone in
Okay.
the middle high school can hear you. Assuming everyone on Zoom can hear you.
Okay, thanks. I am in favor of a full in-person model. Most of this is the pros of a full in-person versus hybrid model. While the level of cases is at a minimum, I believe we should start the school year strong with a full in-person plan.
As flu season hits, we may have to scale back to a hybrid or remote plan, especially if cases are rolled back by the governor. At least a full in-person plan to start will give the teachers and students a chance to meet and develop a relationship and give the kids a chance to have a consistent structure. This will result in a strong start to a challenging school year ahead. No doubt the cases in Massachusetts are up. However, that's irrelevant given that we are testing much more. The important aspect is the percentage of positive cases or positivity rate. We're between about 1 to 2% positivity rate. When we shut down, I believe we were at a 5% positivity rate. Don't quote me on that. I believe Governor Baker will take care of rolling back the phases if need be based on those numbers. The hybrid model looks good for logistical reasons. However, many kids whose parents are now back at work with the current phase 3 reopening in Massachusetts. Many students will not have help with the minimum requirements for remote learning, such as logging on, technical problems, and organization. The actual content and actually keeping a child in their seat and on task is not going to be possible for certain situations in a remote learning model. Parents will have to quit their jobs or pay for childcare, or worse, leave their older child to care for and help siblings with remote learning. For parents and caregivers who can manage all that and are not comfortable with in-person learning, all have the option of remote learning anyway. It would be fair if we also had the chance for a full in-person learning experience while the cases are minimum and the risk is low. This would leave everyone with an equal opportunity for learning while it's possible. Hybrid model is a great alternative, but is definitely not ideal for an equal opportunity, given the inconsistencies with at-home assistance by caregivers. It is going to be difficult to minimize contacts outside of school with the hybrid model. I believe that having students going somewhere else 3 days a week for childcare and or other group settings while parents are working increases the number of people they are in contact with. High-risk retired grandparents may need the childcare for some. Children would now be more likely to bring the virus home to them. The more contacts people make and places they go, the higher the chance of community spread. If we reverse our phases and end up in hybrid, it would be more likely parents will be laid off or working from home again, preventing a problem of kids increasing their contacts on the 3 days they are out of school, and somewhat equalizing the opportunity for the at-home portion of learning. I believe that the current plan for full in-person return is just as safe, if not safer, than most places of employment. Looking at the strategies for mitigation in schools, even if one person tests positive, stops the spread pretty quickly if it is caught in that one class. If parents and school personnel are comfortable with a minimum of 3 feet distance, but most likely the 4 to 5 feet minimum, instead of the 6 foot, we could have students in person 5 days rather than 2 days. It seems that would maybe be the hesitation for some parents and staff with the full in-person versus hybrid. However, this also brings us back to if we are going to go full in-person, now is probably the safest while cases remain low, and the benefits of avoiding as many contacts outside of school on those 3 days they are not in person. We have already missed so much time for in-person learning. I feel the kids deserve a chance to go back to school, and parents stop feeling responsible for much of the school day, especially the younger kids. I understand the guidelines will make school different, but I believe many kids will be mentally better off in person. Even just having their teachers and peers in person from a distance with masks will be invaluable for many of the kids. We are fortunate in Carver to have a new elementary school, updated air systems in both schools, a detailed plan accounting for every single safety precaution and guideline you can think of. With the guidelines shown in the plan, I have confidence that our kids and staff will be as safe as possible, not zero risk, but safe as possible for a full return in the fall. Again, people who do not agree with in-person learning have the option of full remote. So I believe given it's safe, we should have the option to keep our jobs depend on our kids not being at home 3 days a week alone, or having to increase their number of contacts within the community, and or not have the equal amount of support at home. I worry about mental health as well as academic. The school committee, administration, and staff have my support as you make these difficult decisions whether or not I agree. I want to thank everyone that has come up with these amazing plans that are so detailed and the number one priority as safe as can be. I'm impressed with the ideas and so grateful to have a school community that is so dedicated, open-minded, and taking everyone's views into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry that was long-winded.
Thank you very much, Liz. We appreciate it. Do we have anyone else from in person with a comment or a question? Oh, there we go, right to the center.
And if I could just remind you to be loud, if that's okay.
I don't know if we should have a pledge in line.
Yeah, is that, are you guys getting a feed through this mic in the center? Says people on Zoom can't hear it.
And TV.
And the TV.
Can we give them one
And
more?
I'll step back.
All right, yeah, why don't you just pick that up?
Oh, that one picks up pretty well. Yeah.
My name is Samantha Muse, and I was a child care provider in Carver for 12 years. I serviced mostly the DCF, low-income, and foster community in our area. And, I'm sorry.
You can pick it up, but no, just we can't hear you because it's not going through the mic anymore.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Samantha Muse, and I was a child care provider in Carver for 12 years, and I serviced the majority of the area's homeless, DCF, and low-income families. And my concern as we reopen is where those families are going to go and their housing and food insecurity, because I've had a very, unique perspective into these family situations, and I think there's more of these families than we realize. And I just want you to keep in mind that some of these families are struggling with addiction or alcoholism, and they're trapped at home with their kids, and the kids are not receiving the social, emotional, and mental health help that they need. And I think that we would be putting them in a very at-risk situation for them not to return to a full in-person return. And I do worry that these families, especially with the loss of the $600 stimulus and things like that, that they are going to lose their houses or be homeless, and we're going to see an influx of these children that are very much at risk in the community.
Thank you very much, Samantha. All right, you have another Zoom participant?
Yep. The next in line is Liz Taylor from 31 Russell Trufant, thank you, Road in Carver. So Liz, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, good evening. I want to thank the school committee for putting together a really comprehensive plan that really outlines, I think, a lot of the concerns that many of us have in regards to setting our kids back. And I wanted to really commend Liz on her research and sort of points as she just spoke about sending the kids back full time. I've been an essential employee working at the hospital. I was at Carver VIB in Plymouth through this entire pandemic. We are essential employees. We were not furloughed. We took care of patients in not only our community, but Plymouth, Halifax, Kingston, Duxbury, basically everywhere as the pandemic blew up in March, April, May. Luckily, I can say at this point, it is very well controlled in this area. I think we've learned a phenomenal amount about this virus, how to control it. In fact, really at the hospital, our rate of transmission among staff members is minute because of the very simple precautions that we've been able to take in a very high-risk environment. I think I do share some of the concerns that Liz had spoke about earlier, is that we know that there is a second wave of COVID coming. Fauci talks about it, everybody's talking about it. As the flu season approaches, I think we would be amiss to think that we're going to miss our opportunity to go to school this year, because I think the time is now. I don't see that we're going to be in school in November, December, January, if the second wave of it hits. So, just to be mindful that what we do now certainly may have an effect on the relationships and how these kids are getting back to normal in a really not normal time. I think we all feel it. I think every one of us has been, affected by it in different ways, but I think there's a lot that we can do to keep the virus at bay through very simple hygiene. The masks and goggles, really, we use goggles at work, which we use over our glasses, really minimizes transmission to almost zero. So these are really simple things that we can do to minimize the risk to our kids, to allow them to kind of get back to their normal. The other thing I think we worry about as parents is how are we going to continue to do this? We have for the last 5 months had our kids home, and certainly it's not the school's responsibility to be the caregivers for our children, but society is set up in a manner that most of us have to work 2 jobs full time in order to live in this town, to afford homes in this town, and to afford the lifestyle that our kids have been accustomed to. So for one of us to have to stay home or leave our job is just unrealistic, because if we were to do that, we would also be losing our home. So I just ask that as you make the decision to allow our kids to either go back or to stay, just know that I think we would be amiss to think that the time wouldn't be now to do it. Our rates in this area of Glen County are so low right now that I don't know that they'll go lower before they go much higher. That's all.
Thank you very much, Liz. I appreciate the comment. I was just saying, is this switch this microphone on the
Yes.
phone itself?
Check that real quick.
I thought it was working earlier.
Yeah, well, it was working. We tested earlier. It was working before we started.
Yeah, he does the top close.
Okay, get on.
Yeah, I guess we could go real.
Can you hear me? Yeah. He's got top close to it.
All right. Okay, anybody else have a comment or a question for the committee or the administration? Anyone? All right, then we'll go to a Zoom participant. We have.
Yep, the next in line is Robert Harrington from Beaver Dam Road. Robert, I'm going to unmute you, or ask to unmute you.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I really appreciate all the effort you guys have very obviously put into the plans, and it's really quite impressive. I just want to take a moment to stress a couple important things, and I want to make sure we don't lose sight of some of the important things that maybe have not been mentioned enough recently, in my opinion. Obviously, the importance of education for our children is first and foremost for any of us with kids. And I would say that the education of our children and that entire industry, I guess I'll call it in this case, is 100% essential. And I want to make the argument that I think that education, therefore, should continue on as close to normal as possible, the same way that any other essential employee, worker, or business has continued during this pandemic. I do also want to stress the importance of working our economy and our families' well-being, obviously, in terms of their health, but also in terms of financial stability, etc. And thirdly, I want to stress the importance of choice. I'm a little disheartened recently with some of the decisions made politically on things, and I think in a lot of ways our freedom of choice has been removed in a lot of avenues. I can understand the greater good that is the goal in a lot of that, but I would like to ask the school board to vote in such a way that will allow families the greatest amount of choice. I would ask that you vote to do a full return to school, especially considering we can all agree that if this pandemic had not occurred, our children would be doing much better in school and they would have a lot more available to them, and that an in-person learning situation without COVID being a concern would obviously be the best option. If we go back to school full in-person at the building, We've stated multiple times that families that are not comfortable with that will be given the option to opt out of that and do a remote learning service. And therefore, I strongly believe that going back full-time in the building at the schools is by far the obvious and best option for our children. And if there's anyone out there who disagrees with me, that is absolutely fine. You have the freedom to choose for yourself if you feel it's better that your children learn remotely. Thank you for your time, and please keep that in mind when you vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Go back to the audience here. If you have anything that might spur a question in you, feel free to come up and address us. Anybody? All right. We'll go back to Zoom if you have another one.
Yes, the next person is Marissa Fernald from 11 Weston Street. Marissa, I've asked you to unmute. Thank you.
Hi, I just had a question regarding the nurses' offices. We know nurses will be busy. Anyone that works in a school knows how busy a school nurse on a typical day, and their offices are always full. If we are in school in any capacity, are the nurse's office set up to separate students that are in the office and waiting to be picked up because of symptoms? As we saw on the list, it's very long, the list of symptoms. And are they going to be separated from students who may be there because they always go at a certain time for medicine, or maybe they fell at recess time or something like that? I don't think that the two groups should be combined. That was my question.
Okay, thank you, Marissa. Let's talk about the nurses' stations.
So we are going to be, actually we're required by DESI in any in-person model, and something we would do anyhow. We're required to establish a COVID isolation room. So in essence, each building will now have 2 nurses' offices. One will be specifically for those students or staff who may possibly be symptomatic. And then the other nurse's office would be for your general reasons a student would go to the nurse, whether it's taking any medication, or as you said, they fell on the playground and scraped their knee. So we would be isolating those 2 groups. The district is also committed to, if we do return an in-person model, hiring a second nurse for the middle high school. So we would have 2 nurses in each building, and we'd have a nurse to man each space, the regular nurse's room and the COVID isolation room.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick scan every time. Just put your hand up if you have a question, you want to come to the mic. Meredith, how many participants do we have on Zoom?
We have a total of 180 currently.
Wow. We had over 200.
Yes, we had 225.
225. Okay, well, glad people are tuning in. Okay, well, if we have another one.
Yep. The next person in line is Michael Azara of 7 Wade Street. Michael, I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time and efforts that you put into this. I have a very quick question for the town of Carver and the school board. Will the town of Carver be requiring parents to sign a release in order for children to return to school in person under any format?
Thank you, Michael. So,
Not our intention at this time.
yeah, we haven't heard anything from Desi about that, right?
No, there's been no discussion about signing releases or, so the answer with this time would be no.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to leave this off for now. If it doesn't mind. Okay, Meredith, we have another one?
That is the end currently of people that have requested public comment via Zoom.
Okay, well, if anyone else of those attendees want to ask a question, now is the time. Please raise your hand so Meredith can see.
Actually, if you're tuning in through Zoom and you're interested in providing a public comment, please go to the chat feature at the bottom of this screen and click my name, Meredith Erickson, and you can type your name and your address in Carver, and I will put you on the list. Thank you.
All right, while waiting for that, does anyone have a sudden urge to move to the microphone?
I do.
Oh, good, okay.
Well,
Jason?
just, I guess, are we asking our questions on Monday? Or is it just for the public? Should we hold on to ours that have come up until Monday?
So my intention is not to make a formal presentation on Monday. So on Monday, we're going to survey the community, we're going to survey teachers. So I was going to mention at the end of this meeting, there's going to be a survey going out after the public forum tomorrow. So I want to do the public forum tomorrow evening, there's also a question and answer session. So Friday morning, there'll be a survey that'll be going out to, through Jupiter and through Blackboard, to the community, and then also the teachers, and just getting people to weigh in on the 3 models. The reopening committee has taken a vote and weighed in on what they would recommend for the 3 models. And my intent on Monday was just to share all that information with the committee before they made a decision. And then you'll get a recommendation from the superintendent and from the administrative team. So you'll have a recommendation from the superintendent, a recommendation from the reopening committee, or we're going to give you how the reopening committee voted because we couldn't reach a full consensus as a reopening committee. You'll get the survey results from the staff and from the community. I was going to present all of that information and then turn it over to the committee to make a decision. So in my mind, it might make sense to ask the committee to ask questions now, but if process-wise, I would think that we cut off comments. I want to go back and forth, so let's see if we're done with comments. And
That was what I was going to ask, once public comment was done, if we
So
could
we're
go back.
clearing public comment over.
Yes, I agree.
We want to hold off because we have some more on Zoom.
I'll wait till public comment is closed and then.
All right, we have another Zoom question?
Yes, thank you. The next person in line is Debbie Marshall Hewlett of 4 Brewster Avenue. Debbie, I'm going to unmute you right now. Okay, Debbie, you should be good.
Okay, hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, Debbie?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, like other people who have made comments, I want to say thank you very much to Mr. Scott Neve, to all of the school committee, to all of the parents and residents, teachers, everyone who has made comments, who is making this happen. And this is a very, very difficult decision, a very unique, unprecedented time in our community and really across the globe. So safety really is paramount. It's paramount for students, for teachers, for families. I think we all recognize that. I have 2 children. My son is going into 9th grade in the fall. My daughter will be going into 11th grade. And the kids, I'll tell you, the spring pandemic, when it hit, and the interaction in the school, the remote learning, we were all kind of fumbling through it, both administrators, parents, students alike. It did not work well for my children. I know that a lot of things are in place now to help and a much better plan now for remote learning. And I know that parents also have the option, like a couple of the speakers have said, a couple of the parents, that parents have the option to have their children go full remote learning. I am not in favor of a full remote learning plan to start off the school year. I think kids need some personal interaction with teachers, with their friends. They haven't had that since beginning of March. And again, a very difficult decision. And I am also not, though, in favor of a full return to school right now. I think it's too much, too soon. I think it would not be safe to have all of the kids in both of the schools in town all be there at the same time, and while the teachers and administrators are dealing with face masks, we're trying to sanitize, and just, it's a lot of kids to deal with, I think, on a normal day. And our new norm right now seems to be a moving target. So although I appreciate all of the comments and people who felt like a full return to school is the way to go, I really feel like a hybrid plan where you can have the kids split them up, easier to deal with the amount of children who would be there 2 days a week, and then try to have the half a day of the remote learning on Wednesday. I think think it would be a good way to introduce this to both students, parents, teachers alike. And I think that that would really be the way to go to start off this school year, to see how this would work on all levels and give the kids some additional attention that they need with only having half of the school and the students there at any one particular time. So I can appreciate that that is very difficult for a lot of parents. I think all three of these plans, I think there's difficulty there in each one of the plans. And I'm not a parent who's gonna say, I want my kids to be full remote. So I would like to see them in school part of the time, but I just think that the hybrid plan is the way to go. And I hope to see the school committee vote in that fashion on the hybrid plan. So thank you all very much. Appreciate all the work you've done on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Do we have any more on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
The next person is Michelle Matrano, 19 North Main Street. Michelle, just give me 1 second and I'm going to unmute you. All right, you are now unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Michelle.
Okay. So I see full remote option that, specifically I was looking at the Florida, FSV, whatever it was, the global option. That actually has a fee per course for $475. How would that be handled if a family chose to go that route?
So it's the district's responsibility to provide all three options, or the fourth option, the in-person remote. So also the district pays for it. So DESE is actually contracted with Edgenuity and the Florida Virtual School, and we're getting some preferred pricing, but that would be being paid for out of the school district's budget. There's some question as to whether, from a payment standpoint, whether that's a cost that could be charged off to the CARES Act money. So Plymouth County has a CARES Act fund, which any COVID-related expenses, municipalities can, in essence, purchase and then be reimbursed through that CARES Act fund. It is unclear right now if paying for students' placement on the remote learning platform would be paid for through the CARES Act fund, but we'll know that. I think we'll have an answer to that in the next couple of weeks. But ultimately, it's not the parent's responsibility, it's the school district's responsibility to pay for the placements.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have any others?
No, we do not currently have any other public comment requests.
All right, then, if there are no more, I'm going to end the public comment portion unless someone else has anything they want to step up to the mic about. All right, then I'm going to end public comment portion of this meeting. Did you want to ask a question now, Jason, or do you want to hold till Monday?
No, I'd like to ask them now, and I don't know if anyone else has some too, but
Okay, you recognize.
I have three,
All right.
so bear with me. First, just a little clarification, and I know there's a million different scenarios that could come out. What if this, what if that, but I think this one's actually pretty important. Let's say we have a student who chooses full remote and we're in a hybrid plan. On those remote learning days, can that student join their cohort that they're assigned?
No, so our plan at this time is that those students who choose full remote are selecting full remote. That you're not doing both options at once.
Okay.
Obviously that was a recommendation from an earlier public comment that we find some way to allow those students to join the cohort, but that is not the current plan.
Okay. The thing about fall sports came up. Is that our decision if it's not a mandate from DESE?
So that was a very vague comment by the commissioner. So, but he did say to share it with school committees. So I will share what he said, which was that, obviously right now fall sports is suspended until September 14th. And the MIA is planning some model of fall sports, which I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I do think that they're waiting to see, ultimately by next week, I'm sure it's going to be published everywhere, what every school district in Massachusetts is doing, because all the school committees have to take a vote by August 10th. So there'll be a list out there somewhere saying this is what people are doing, and I think the MIA, I'm sure, will look at that list and see, look at the number of districts that are either remote or hybrid, and that's going to impact their decision. The commissioner's statement was, I do not see how a school district who would select to be remote would be able to participate in sports. That's exactly what he said, and I can't clarify his comment further. Okay. So I don't know if that's local choice, not local choice. That is exactly what he said to the superintendents on a phone call on Monday, and said that you could share that information with your school committees.
All right, thank you. I mean, I'm just in the back of my head, we're making this decision about, and then to add sports on top of it, yeah. The last one, and this came up through some of the comments and some of the emails we've received, and thank you everyone for those. I know there are plans for students with disabilities, those high needs, the Ls, there's a plan for having them come into school. Is there a plan, or has it been discussed for those students who have high needs for social emotional?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So there's actually, we actually have a meeting tomorrow, including Director of Special Ed Karen Tyker, special education teachers, administrators, and we're going to start planning around what groups we might possibly be inviting in for full in-person, and then working individually with their families. And like I said, I have that, whatever the school committee votes, right. Ultimately we would then be going to those families and say, yeah, you can do what the school committee voted. But here's our reasoning why we feel like it may be beneficial for you to be full in person, and then let them make that decision. As I said, most of our high intensive needs students have been coming full in person in the summer, and our sense is those students who've been in the summer would attend in the fall. Preschool right now, our intention is to run, preschool kind of runs on a hybrid model anyhow. Right. Not saying we don't know the school committees would vote, but ultimately the preschool, no one comes all day for 5 days a week. So our intention is to run the preschool program as planned.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Do any of our other members have any questions while we're? Okay. All right, well that ends that section. We're going to move to reports from the school committee. Anybody have any comment?
It's up to you. No, you can go.
Stephanie Clardy, for those who may not be able to see me on Zoom or on TV. First, I just wanted to say that I didn't ask any questions tonight because I've been a member of the reopening committee, and I'm well immersed. Not closer, okay, sorry. I just wanted to make it clear that I didn't ask any specific questions this evening because I'm a member of the reopening committee, so I am very much immersed in the plans that were presented tonight and that Superintendent Meade has presented previously. So I am very aware of where things stand, and I understand that things are changing daily, and we are getting updates as those changes occur. I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has attended in person and at home and that is watching on TV. Clearly we're all faced in an unprecedented time that none of us could ever have imagined. It's like we're all living in this horrible sci-fi movie that we all just wish it would end. Fortunately, that's not an option, but I want to thank everyone that has put in their blood, sweat, and tears to put these plans together. No plan is going to be perfect. No plan is going to work for every family. This is a very personal decision that families need to make for themselves. We are going to make the best decision that we are able to based on the information that we're receiving from experts in all different aspects of medical fields, in the school community, at the state level, and we all take this very seriously. And we are available. Mr. Neef is available. All of us are available via email. If you have any questions that you don't want to ask publicly, please feel free to reach out to us or the building administrators, because we are here to answer questions. We're here to help. We're here to advocate on behalf of students. And that is our role. And we all take it very seriously. So I just wanted to say thank you. And also I wanted to congratulate everyone that put on a tremendous I felt convocation and graduation ceremony this past weekend. It was outdoors, they were outdoors on the fields, and while it was different, it was still, I thought, tremendous to see students celebrate it and having the opportunity for a quick photo and to get their diplomas and their awards and to be recognized, because they too are embarking on an unprecedented future. So it was nice to see that they were able to be recognized and celebrated in a different manner, but still celebrated as part of our community. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Stephanie. Jason?
I'll echo everything, all the things that Stephanie said. One thing that we didn't really explicitly say tonight, it was kind of implied, we're at the mercy of DESE guidance and the state guidance. So Monday we could come and vote on whatever model, and Tuesday the governor could come and say, nope, you're doing this. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind as well, that while we're going through the process and there's a lot to unpack and there's a lot to think about, it could just be we're told what to do, you know what I mean? So I want everyone to keep that in mind as well. This isn't easy, and I've been going back and forth and even listening to people. I think I know what I want to do, and then it changes with another comment like, oh, I didn't consider that, and it's tough. It's very tough. So like Stephanie said, we're going to do what's best for the school department, for the families, and keep giving us your input. Send us those emails, tell us what you think, ask those questions. We need to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Jen, do you have anything?
Yes, please, sorry. Jennifer Pratt, for those who don't know me. I echo what the other committee members have said. I have read every text and every email and every message that has come my way with the utmost respect for how everyone feels and taking it all into consideration. I empathize with the parents who are very distraught for safety, who are very distraught for their own employment, who are very distraught over their children's social well-being. As a committee member, my priority is to do what's best for the children of the town of Carver, and I do not take that responsibility lightly. When I decided to run for school committee back in, I think it was February, I did not anticipate that this would be the first major decision that I would have to make. With that being said, I don't regret my decision, and if you have concerns and you do not feel like you could speak up tonight, you are comfortable, please email us or reach out to us. We do represent you. No decision that we make on Monday is going to be right. I truly feel that the only thing that would feel right to us would be if we were where we were a year ago, able to go to school normally, not afraid of breathing in a virus that could potentially harm us. We are in uncharted waters, and I ask that people just take that under guidance, because no matter what decision we make, there will be people that will be upset, there will be people that disagree with it, and we can't make everybody happy in this scenario that we're in. I'm endeavoring to make the very best decision that I can. We all want to keep our kids safe, and so just please continue to reach out to us with that feedback, and we'll be taking under the advisement all the expert guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I'll go last, obviously. I'd like to thank everybody at Area 58 for filming this for us and getting it on the air and on YouTube, hopefully soon, so people can reference it. I would like to also thank all of our Zoom participants and our administration and Meredith for handling all of that, and Scott for being available for all the questions, and Gina for taking it all down. I can echo everything my colleagues have said in the last few meetings. I seem to go last, and they make so many good points. But really, if you do have concerns, please contact us. We run for these positions. We ask for your vote to run for these positions because we think we can make a difference. And I think we have. With your power, with your vote, we are leaders in the community. But we do so with the power, with your power that you give to us as your representatives. And we have to be able to represent you as best we can. So in saying that, the more input we get from the people, the best, that will inform us in the best decision we can make for what's best in the community. So it's not about our personal opinions. We represent you. And that's the way I think government was always meant to be. But, that being said, I'll also echo Stephanie's thoughts on graduation. I got to say congratulations to 99 graduates, and one of my favorite parts about being chairman of this committee is actually sitting down and actually signing each diploma. You know, right in the middle, is it, geez, I'm actually signing this kid's diploma. You know, it's kind of an honor. Well, it is an honor, you know, and that's one of my favorite parts about this position. That being said, I will tell you that our next meeting will be here on the 10th, on Monday. We will take the vote on the plan here. It will be a regular meeting. There will be other things on the agenda, but you're all welcome to come as well. I'm not sure if we'll have a Zoom, probably no Zoom participation unless public comment, but are we doing Zoom that meeting?
I thought our intention was for that meeting to do Zoom as well.
Okay.
To do the same setup for that meeting, and then, you know, in the future, maybe not do
Not to
both
do
live and Zoom, but based on that decision, we thought it made sense to do both.
Okay, yes, I forgot. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right, so Zoom will be a possibility as well. That being said, I want to thank everybody for coming as well. I would take a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Yep, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, as well. It's unanimous. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe. Right, and here in altogether 29.
I just want to make sure because I quit Facebook, so I pay attention.
19 people in the audience and 9, yeah. And you're
Yeah. And then Robert, I was literally like, stop all good time.
All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna go.